Most people believe closure comes from a final conversation, a clear explanation, a mutual understanding that neatly ties everything together. But psychology suggests something far more uncomfortable. Closure is rare because the human mind resists endings more than it seeks clarity. When something important ends without resolution, it lingers, it replays, it refuses to settle. And the reason has less to do with the other person and more to do with how your brain processes unfinished experiences. By the end of this, you will understand why closure feels so necessary, why it is so difficult to achieve, what happens in the brain when something ends abruptly, and how to move forward even when answers never arrive. Human beings are meaning-making creatures. We crave narrative. When a relationship ends suddenly or a friendship fades without explanation, the story feels incomplete. The brain struggles with open loops. There's a psychological principle known as the Zeigarnik effect. It suggests that unfinished tasks remain more mentally active than completed ones. The brain holds on to what is unresolved because it is still searching for completion. An unanswered ending becomes a cognitive itch. When a relationship ends without clear explanation, the mind tries to fill the gaps. It analyzes past conversations, it replays small details, it imagines alternative outcomes. This rumination feels productive, but it often deepens confusion. The brain prefers a painful answer over no answer at all. But here's the first uncomfortable truth. The person who left may not fully understand their own reasons. Humans are not always self-aware. They may act from impulse, fear, or avoidance. So even if they offered an explanation, it might not satisfy you. Closure is not always hidden. Sometimes it simply does not exist. Emotionally, endings activate the same neural systems involved in loss and threat. The amygdala heightens alertness. Stress hormones increase. The attachment system searches for reconnection. The absence of contact feels like danger. Your nervous system interprets silence as instability. Now pause and ask yourself something honest. Do you want closure because you need information or because you want relief from uncertainty? Those are different needs. Uncertainty is deeply uncomfortable for the brain. Humans are wired to predict outcomes. Predictability equals safety. When something ends without explanation, the brain cannot categorize the experience. It cannot label it as complete, so it keeps scanning for resolution. This is why you may feel pulled to check messages long after contact has stopped. There's also a deeper layer. Closure often requires accepting a narrative that may threaten your self-image. If someone leaves without explanation, the mind may create stories that preserve identity. They were confused, they were afraid, timing was wrong. Sometimes the real fear is not the ending, but what the ending implies. Here's a surprising insight. Seeking closure can sometimes prolong attachment. Each attempt to get answers reactivates emotional circuits tied to the relationship. Hope subtly resurfaces. The bond remains neurologically active. Letting go requires tolerating ambiguity. In friendships, romantic relationships, and even careers, people often avoid difficult conversations. Avoidance feels easier in the moment. It protects against confrontation, but it leaves others suspended in uncertainty. Avoidance by one person creates rumination in another. Consider workplace dynamics. An employee is let go with vague feedback. It wasn't the right fit. That ambiguity can haunt someone longer than clear criticism. The mind tries to decode what went wrong. Ambiguity feeds self-doubt. Have you noticed how the mind prefers to blame itself when answers are missing? Self-blame creates a sense of control. If it was your fault, then future pain can be prevented. But if it was random or outside your control, that feels more threatening. Control feels safer than chaos. Another reason closure is rare is that it requires emotional maturity from both parties. It demands honest reflection, vulnerability, and the willingness to tolerate discomfort. Not everyone has the capacity or desire to engage at that level, so endings become silent exits. The cultural narrative around closure can also mislead us. We are taught that mature adults talk everything through, that a final conversation will bring peace, but sometimes that conversation reopens wounds instead of healing them. Information doesn't always equal relief. Here's a pattern interrupt. Imagine receiving the exact explanation you think you need. Would it truly satisfy you, or would new questions arise? Often, closure is less about answers and more about acceptance. Acceptance is internal, not external. The brain struggles most with sudden, ambiguous loss. When there is no ritual, no acknowledgement, no defined end, the experience feels suspended. Rituals help the brain categorize transitions. Without them, endings blur. Unmarked endings linger longer. In romantic relationships, the attachment system complicates everything. Bonds are formed through repeated interaction, shared memories, and emotional vulnerability. When contact stops, the brain still expects connection. That expectation doesn't vanish overnight. Attachment doesn't switch off on command. This is why you may feel waves of longing months later. The neural pathways built during the relationship are still active. They weaken gradually, but only if they are not repeatedly reactivated through checking, reminiscing, or re-engaging. Distance helps the brain recalibrate. There's also ego involved. Being left without explanation can feel like a loss of status. It can trigger feelings of rejection. The mind seeks closure to restore dignity, to prove worth, to confirm that the connection mattered. Sometimes the real desire is validation. Reflect on this. Are you seeking closure from the other person or from yourself? Because self-closure involves acknowledging reality without requiring mutual agreement. That shift changes everything. Self-closure means creating your own narrative based on observable facts. It means recognizing patterns. It means accepting that someone's inability to communicate clearly says more about them than about your value. It requires emotional autonomy. This doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It means allowing grief without chasing explanation. It means tolerating the discomfort of not knowing. Over time, the brain adapts. The urgency fades. The open loop closes internally. Healing is often quieter than closure. The dark reason closure is so rare is this: humans avoid discomfort, both in leaving and in being left. Avoidance protects in the short term, but creates ambiguity in the long term, and ambiguity keeps the mind searching. But searching doesn't always bring peace. Real closure is not a final conversation, it's a decision to stop seeking answers from someone who cannot or will not provide them, a decision to accept uncertainty as part of human experience. That decision restores power. The next time you feel pulled towards unanswered endings, pause, notice the urge. Ask whether pursuing more information will truly serve your healing or simply reactivate attachment. Sometimes the most powerful closure is silence. If this resonated, reflect on where you may still be seeking resolution externally. Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments if you feel comfortable. Conversations like these help normalize the complexity of endings. And if you want deeper insights into the psychology of attachment and human behavior, consider subscribing to continue exploring the patterns that shape our emotional lives.